The NBA season has ended in dramatic fashion, and the playoffs are underway. Just to get a little meta here for a second, I've been trying really hard to find time to prioritize writing and making videos, but I'm in the last stretch of college, and I've got to be honest, it's been nuking my brain. Nonetheless, I've got to make something about the playoffs, and thankfully they'll still be going on post-graduation, if I graduate. Haha, self-deprecating joke. It's not a joke. Please help me, I'm scared, JK, I'm totally good. Okay, just getting right into it, let's lay out who our characters are. In the West, the number 1 seed Denver Nuggets are facing the Minnesota Timberwolves, who clinched the 8th seed after losing to the Lakers, but then defeating the Thunder in the play-ins. They've played 3 games, and yeah, this one's looking like a sweep. Denver is just so much more deep offensively. Look at the scoring distribution in Game 1 to highlight that point. They're better built, better coached, and they have better players. Cat should use his size more, and the Rudy Gobert trade gets worse by the day. Next. The Memphis Grizzlies are facing off against the 7th seed Lakers, who are looking more and more like real contenders. They're deep, they're big, they defend well, and I realize now what I just said. Ja Morant suffered a rough hand injury in Game 1, and it's unclear when he'll return to the series. It was going to be a close one before that, but if they don't have Ja, I don't see the Grizzlies being able to overpower the Lakers, even with their precedent to play well despite not having Ja in the rotation. Also, congratulations to Jaren Jackson Jr. on winning the Defensive Player of the Year award. It's very deserved, and he had a crazy Game 1 performance. Unfortunately, even with Triple J, Memphis lacks the size and interior presence to stop the Lakers, so they're my pick in this one. And screw it, if you want to get spicy, I'll make legitimate predictions. Lakers in 7. Next is a personal favorite, and that's the 3 seed Sacramento Kings against the 6 seed Golden State Warriors. The Kings snapped a 17-year playoff drought and won a crazy first game with historic offensive production from their bench. The Kings aren't the best defensively, and they clearly lack a lot of playoff experience, but you know what? I think they can beat the Warriors. The Dubs suck on the road. It's up in the air on how impactful guys like Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, and Gary Payton II are gonna be. And yes, I know experience means a lot. I'm even someone who would echo that, but to hell with it. Experience. The Kings know how to get buckets, and the Warriors just haven't looked dominant enough at any point this season, so with some home court advantage late into the series, I think they'll be able to pull it off. Kings in 6 or 7. And lastly, the Phoenix Suns and Los Angeles Clippers are battling off in a Thunder fan's wet dream or a Thunder fan's nightmare. It's really unfortunate Paul George got injured before the playoffs. I feel so bad that someone who's had to keep the Clippers afloat for so much time this season can't play when his team needs him the most and they're finally ready. It sucks to see. Besides that, Kawhi looked like he hadn't skipped a beat in the first 2 games, but then he just decided nah, I don't know what's really up with him, and depending on what the playoffs look like as a whole for the Clippers, Kawhi's future is definitely going to have to be talked about, but aside from that, man is it fun to watch a team live and die by Russell Westbrook. I'm referring to his Game 1 performance where he had a horrific shooting night and yet dominated the boards and played insane defense, including an absurd play at the end of the game that may have just sealed the win. I initially saw this series as being a rather quick one in Phoenix's favor, and I still think I have them over LA, but something about their offensive output so far has seemed pretty lackluster for what they can be capable of. Devin Booker has been elite in that department so far, but KD has looked pretty passive, especially when the Clippers put out an almost entire guard lineup on the floor. His 7-foot ass should be cooking, especially with Ayton, who's been alright so far. Ultimately, it's a fun series, but I'm going to take the Suns in 6. Moving over to the East. The Bucks are facing the Heat, and this series is going to be way more interesting than I think a lot of people thought it would be. There's not many 8th seeds throughout the league's history that have as much talent and experience as the Miami Heat. After being the 1 seed last season, they fell off quite a bit, and 25th in offensive rating and 9th in defensive rating this year doesn't scream favorable matchup against the Bucks. And after their win in Game 1, it didn't do much to dissuade me from that fact. Not only did Giannis play just 11 minutes, but the Heat scored at a ridiculous level of efficiency. 59.5% from the field, 60% from 3, playoff Jimmy Butler reared his mean mug, and most importantly, Bam Adebayo had a great game, where he was even hitting on jump shots from outside the paint. Now, that might all sound like reasons to not count the Heat out. Hell, if the Heat played every game like that, they would probably be the favorites, but they won't. Or at least I don't think they will. In recent seasons, they've hung their hat on their shooting, and it just hasn't been falling at that rate this season, so Game 1 was an abnormality to say the least. I really don't think I could count on the Heat to play like they did in Game 1 for a whole series, and even with a decent effort in Game 2, the Bucks handled business. On top of that, Giannis' return is looking promising, so I don't imagine his absence will be a defining factor of this series. Unfortunately, Miami won't have such injury luck because Tyler Hero broke his hand, and it's looking like he could return around the time of the finals at best. That's a huge blow to the Heat's offense, and if Giannis is back by game 3 or 4, then I've got the Bucks in 6. Moving on, the 2nd seed, 7th seed matchup is the Boston Celtics versus the Atlanta Hawks. Should we be getting our brooms out? Nope, not entirely, but this series will be over fairly quickly. As a top 10 offense but bottom 10 defense this season, there's just nothing a team like the Hawks, who desperately lack size in a matchup like this, can really do. I think Trae Young just has too specific a set of skills to be the main guy on a championship level team. I'm not really a hater of his. I'm in fact super impressed with his ability to elevate in big moments and stay absolutely icy, but his size, his negative defensive ability, and need to mostly have the ball at least running through him leaves almost very little promise for the Hawks in terms of their future with him behind the helm. I don't really want to get into teams and their futures post this season. I feel like there's a lot more to say than just a brief passing comment, plus it'll make great content during the summer. But Trae is at best a 1B kind of guy, and he's not going to be leading Atlanta to any sort of upset against one of, if not arguably, the most well-rounded team in basketball. I'll say Boston in 5. It wouldn't be all that shocking to me if Atlanta did scratch out another win though, so there's a little bit of margin for error on that one. Next up is the 76ers versus the Nets. I was going to say that there's almost nothing worth talking about in this series and call it Philly in 5 games, but this was in fact a clean sweep. The Nets do have a lot of talent on their roster, they just had nothing near compatible for a matchup against Embiid and the Sixers. Nick Claxton was like the best you could put on Embiid, and he had a subpar game 1 and just a flat out stinker in game 2, so yeah, it was really only a matter of time. Jacques Vaughn didn't seem to want to play Cam Thomas, and there's only so much Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson can do. It'll be interesting to see what they do next, but as for now, Philly's on to the next round. And the final first round playoff matchup is one that will certainly take a few years off my lifespan. The 4th seed Cleveland Cavaliers versus the New York Knicks. The 3 games of this series so far have been absolute slugfests. Everyone's been playing well, or at least keeping their head above water. I know Julius Randle had a really bad shooting performance in game 3, but Jalen Brunson really came up clutch. Evan Mobley is a generational defensive player, and it's a treat to watch his Slenderman ass play basketball. Donovan Mitchell is from my area and seems like a very likable guy, so it's hard to root against him. In general, I just really like this Cavs team, so it's an amazing series for me. The Knicks are up 2-1 as of now, and if they can win one more time in Madison Square Garden, then they'll have 3 opportunities to win 1 game. I like those odds. Give me Knicks in 6 or 7. Finally, there's just some miscellaneous things I want to discuss as they relate to the end of the NBA season. Congrats to Malcolm Brogdon on winning 6th Man of the Year. Of course, I was pulling for Emmanuel Quickley, but Brogdon is a cheat code as the 6th man up. As well as congrats to De'Aaron Fox on winning the first ever Clutch Player of the Year award. Mike Brown won Coach of the Year, and that couldn't be more well deserved. And as of the time I'm making this video, the Most Improved Player of the Year hasn't been announced, nor has the MVP. It's looking a lot like Embiid did what he needed in the last stretch of the season to earn the award for a lot of voters. I still think there's been a massive amount of silence as far as keeping Giannis' name in the conversation goes, but if Embiid wins it, as I said in my video about the MVP race and all of this stuff, he deserves it, of course. I wish he didn't flop as much, and he probably should have been ejected for the kick on Claxton. Speaking of kicks, oh my goodness, gravy, Draymond Green is an infuriating basketball player to watch. That was beyond a dirty ground pound on Sabonis' solar plex. But back to Embiid, yeah, if it's him, congrats, man. I know a lot of people want him to win one just because it wouldn't feel right for him to have 0 MVPs out of this whole Giannis, Jokic, Embiid era, but I honestly think that's doing a disservice to his actual play, and I don't really care about that stuff. And as far as the Most Improved Player goes, the Finnish sniper should win it, of course. Quickly, I want to mention the Mavericks because, wow, making a massive win-now mid-season trade for Kyrie Irving just to end up falling from around the 5th seed to out of the playoffs. Also, I totally understand the mentality from a business perspective behind sitting everyone in their last game of the season out, but that's just such a jabroni move, man, and doing the fans so dirty. And as for the playoffs, I think the conference finals matchups will be the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics in the East. Man, the semifinals matchup between the Sixers and the Celtics is going to be a good one. Ultimately, Boston just runs a little deeper and will have home court advantage, so that's how I'm making my prediction for that. And for the Western Conference Finals, I would say the Denver Nuggets are going to be facing the Lakers. I can't believe I'm saying that with a straight face, but just because of the way the brackets are made, I've got Sacramento beating Golden State and the Lakers beating the Grizzlies. I'm sorry, but I don't think the Lakers are going to lose to the Kings. If the Lakers actually turn around their season from bottom of the West all the way to the conference finals, that'll be a great day for annoying people, but I could honestly see it happening. LeBron, AD, Austin Reeves, D'Lo sometimes, the Vandalorian, Rui Hachimura, take me home, baby. And even though I'll have an opportunity to talk more before the end of the playoffs, I might as well keep it going. The Bucks will beat the Celtics in 7, and the Nuggets will beat the Lakers in 6 or 7. And the NBA champions will be the Milwaukee Bucks. Start the freaky greeky narrative now. Hey, editing me here. So let's talk about the elephant in the room with this video. The Heat took down the Bucks in 5 games, and I don't really know what to say. Despite what my omniscient self said, Giannis's absence was in fact a defining factor of this series, as he essentially missed the first 3 games. When he came back for the last 2, he was alright in both games, plenty of positives in the box score department, sure, but he missed 13 free throws in Game 5, which is a 2-point loss. The biggest standouts from the series were definitely the coaching decisions. Jay Crowder played like 40 minutes over the whole series. And as for Game 5, Mike Budenholzer's failure to call a timeout to advance the ball with 0.5 seconds on the clock in regulation is just mind-boggling. I mean, I don't really have words. Apparently, when the teams went back to their huddle to prep for overtime, the Heat's coach, Eric Spoelstra, basically said, "What the hell is he doing?" And then Grayson Allen, this old son of a gun. He dribbled the damn clock out in overtime with like 2.5 seconds left, and he didn't even put up a shot. And then there's Jimmy Butler. I said about Game 1 that playoff Jimmy reared his mean mug, and yeah, that was only the beginning of that. 56 points, 9 rebounds in Game 4, 42 in Game 5. Over the series, he averaged 37.5 points on 60% field goal shooting and 67% true shooting. Just pure dominance. So, yeah, I don't know what to say. This is the 6th time in league history an 8th seed has overcome a 1st seed and escaped the first round. If it was going to be a team, I'm not really that surprised it was the Heat. My biggest takeaway from this series is, wow, it's hard to go to consecutive finals. And it's just insane how teams and players have made it look easy in the past. There's not much that you could find that's wrong with the Bucks on paper, and injuries affected both teams this series. Sometimes it's not on the cards, I guess. I know this will kind of forever be seen as a failure, and in some aspects it is for sure, but I don't think the Bucks should make any massive moves or rock the boat too hard. I realize Coach Bud is probably out. To be fair, Bucks fans have been complaining that he's had questionable rotations all year, so I don't think this would entirely be the reason, but certainly the nail in the coffin if that happened. It's pretty crazy, honestly. Only 2 years after winning a championship, this is the line we're seemingly approaching. I'm not defending Coach Bud, and I don't think he's particularly that great, and in general, just because you won a championship in the past doesn't automatically mean you're not hurting your team in the present. It's just the state of basketball now. Everything moves so quick, and you're only going to be given so much time to not produce. We'll see what happens in Milwaukee. I think they need to assess how they approach the game in big moments. They definitely lacked discipline at times throughout the series, but yeah, I think overall, the Bucks, Giannis, they'll be alright. The only other update worth mentioning is this Kings-Warriors series. It's close, man. If the Kings can really pull off a big win in Golden State, then it's going to 7 games. If it did go down to 7, it would be really tough to say who could win because, well, anyone can win a Game 7. The Warriors are buns on the road, but with all their experience, they'd probably just have to be your pick as far as who's a team that can show up to a Game 7, you know? The Kings would have the home court advantage, though, and if De'Aaron Fox played a really great game and Sabonis was way more physical on the boards than he has been so far throughout this series, then I think there's still a shot. If not, then we could be looking at a Steph versus Bron semifinals. That's assuming the Lakers take care of the Grizzlies, which I've still got them doing, probably in 6. Warriors-Lakers would be a really fun series, certainly one for the history books. I still think the Lakers could win it, but it would really take AD and Bron showing up just about every game, and they'd need at least one other guy, Austin Reeves, Rui, D'Lo, to get like 20 to 25 points and hit some timely shots. I think they could do it, though. As for my predictions, I guess that means I've got the Celtics winning. They were my pick after the Bucks to come out of the East if they win that second round matchup against the Sixers, and I don't really think any of the Eastern Conference's big 3 would lose to the Nuggets. Honestly, the Sixers could absolutely beat the Celtics. Jason Tatum is about as inconsistent as it gets when it comes to the highest tier of NBA players right now, and the Celtics just drop games they should win all the time. They just lost another game to the Hawks, and there's room for it to even go to 7, and you already know what I would say if that goddamn happened. But yeah, I'm just going to do some coping and say that the Knicks will beat the Heat in round 2 because they got to play 4 games in Madison Square Garden, and screw it, I am full Knicks pill mode after they cleared up the remains of Cleveland. So yeah, Celtics in 7 games to win the NBA Finals. Sure, why the hell not? Alright, that's all from me. I gotta get back to BSing this final paper. Enjoy the playoffs, everyone. I'll be back soon. Until next time, take care.